Everybody, welcome to the October 3rd, 2025 Lower Merion School District Policy Meeting. We will be opening the meeting. Ms. Fraser, did you have any comments before, or should I hand it right over to, Miss Schaefer, and then, yeah. I didn't realize how close your names are.
Sure, I'll give a little bit of an orientation to today's meeting and then hand it over to Ms. Fraser.
Yeah, and I should let everybody know that this meeting is being recorded, and that if you have any comments, you can put them in the chat, and if anybody, community members, we have one, comes up, please state your name and where you live. Okay, thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Also, happy Policy Meeting Day. For today's agenda, we'll have a couple presentations, and Ms. Fraser will be leading us off there. I think it's always helpful to come back and revisit the policy work that we do as we move forward, so we can share and show that it's not just about putting things in writing, it's about the next steps and how we implement the work and do so thoughtfully and across the board. And I'm happy that Ms. Fraser was able to be here today to give a brief update on policy NAR 236 and the implementation of those changes. We will also be looking at Policy 125 summer programs. It will be a nice opportunity for us to just take a look at some minor revisions right now. It's also something that will be presented at the CCOB meeting. So there's nothing that's urgent, so we can talk about some of those changes today. You'll hear this CCOB meeting, and then we can revisit it again if there are other further updates or questions about that particular policy. We have a minor revision for an AR, and we'll also have another presentation that I'll be leading on registration and residency to close out today, and also tee up our meeting in November with some additional revisions to potential revisions to those policies as well. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Fraser.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. I was always happy to talk about this. As Megan mentioned, we, as you know, collectively put a lot of work into the policy development and the revisions to Policy 236. And, as I shared with my team and other team members, that was just step one, because implementation is just as much, if not more work, right? Because the policy is great and provides us with the guidance, and the implementation of it is critical. So we've taken a lot of different action steps. Along the way, in every presentation, I've mentioned about collective responsibility, and that the work that we do to support students with disabilities isn't just about the work of the special education team, but it's about everybody. And we believe in that. And with that in mind, it's also our responsibility as administrators to make sure that each of the team members, whatever their role is equipped to be able to live up to their collective responsibility. So we think very deeply about that in terms of what we provide to all of our staff, and you'll see as we talk about kind of some of the key initial action steps that we've taken, that we've kept this idea in mind about how are we making sure that every team member is prepared to be able to support children well. Some of the things that I'll highlight today, just some key initial action steps. We focused heavily on professional learning and thinking about what we're doing this year, but also what we're thinking about in the years to come. We developed Team 236 in each of our schools, and so I'll talk a little bit with you about that. And then there were restraint reporting procedure updates, minor, and so making sure that teams were aware of what those changes were. For the professional learning plan, all staff receive training throughout the school year, and the training is tiered, right? The training that a special education teacher might need would be different than, say, a cafeteria aide would need. It depends on what your role is, how you support students, and specifically how you support them. So we're being mindful of the need for tiered training. We're emphasizing establishing instructional environments that promote self-regulation of behavior. We're always have the goal of reducing the need for restraints, right? And when you think about the tiers of intervention that we have, the things that we're putting in place is always to avoid those crisis situations. One thing that's important to highlight with the professional learning plan is that it isn't just what happens during those days where your children are at home and staff are together receiving professional learning. There really is ongoing professional learning, and part of that ongoing professional learning is the direct consultation of our board-certified behavior analysts, so our BCBAs that support our schools, and the ongoing support and consultation that they provide. Inherently, that is also professional learning. With the professional learning plan, not yet. Yeah, with the professional learning plan, with those tiered systems. We started the year before the school year started. I provided training to all of our administrators. As the staff came back, the principals did turnaround training on the policy with all of their staff in their schools. Megan and I took our show on the road and spent time with our transportation department and did that training personally. So thinking about like how do we reach all of our groups within our schools. For this year coming up, that we have identified targeted areas of professional learning that will be throughout the school year. I just put up for you what we've identified as the topics as well as the learning targets. So thinking about positive behavior through trauma-sensitive interventions, the basics of behavior. How do we de-escalate challenging behavior? And some of those behavior basics, all staff can use those de-escalation strategies. Thinking about universal sensory spaces and tools. We talked a lot about sensory through the process here. It's definitely a more common thing that you hear in education, but not everybody really knows what it means and what that looks like within the environment. So providing professional learning on that. And then implementing positive behavior support plans with fidelity. What's my responsibility? What's my role? How does that look in my classroom? So these are like our targeted areas throughout the school year. And again, to emphasize that this isn't just about the 25-26 school year. We've made a commitment to ongoing professional learning related to positive behavioral supports and thinking about how we move forward 3 to 5 years from now with that continued professional learning. What we elected to do as an administrative team is to develop what we are calling Team 236 in each of our schools. This was informally happening. What we wanted to do is to kind of put more of a system behind it and consistency across all of our schools. So every school has created a Team 236. The members of the Team 236, you can see who those are. These are really your safety care trained school team members. We've committed to at least 2 building administrators in every school being trained and part of this team. It's your select instructional assistants, behavior aides, your special education teachers, and then your BCPAs for each school. This team are the ones that provide the direct support when students have escalating behavior. So they're your responders. Board Certified Behavior Analysts. Yep, I apologize. Yeah, I'd said it previously, but I'll say it as we move forward. They provide direct support for students. We want them to do more of being experts in behavior where they can be resources for all staff as well. So it's thinking about not just being the responders, but being able to provide ongoing consultation, support, and training to school staff. For our Team 236, they are required and receive training in all of the positive behavior support plans for students in their school. They are required to meet monthly. Within that monthly meeting, we have a standing agenda that each Team 236 is following. That standing agenda looks like they do wellness check-ins with staff, which is an important part of the work. They do a monthly reflection, what went well, what do we need to think about differently. We also provide team discussion. There's a team discussion where it's what changes are there to plans, what changes do we need to know, what's new. And then we also have a mini PD that's provided by the BCBA. The Board Certified Behavior Analyst is at every monthly Team 236 meeting. We have a year plan for what those mini PD sessions include. It is the BCBAs who are developing those, so it's consistent across all of our schools. And they have that kind of monthly topic, so that the idea is like, again, that professional learning. Team 236 are like critical team members in our school, and we're thinking about like that tiered training. How do we give them more intensive training related to positive behavior supports, and how do we do that really well? And then thinking that from this Team 236, we are building capacity in the schools to be able to support all students. That's our vision as we move forward with Team 236. In addition to the monthly meetings, the Team 236 is also now required per their administrative regulations to hold a debriefing meeting if physical management procedures are used. So they're required to come back together as a team. We have set for them the format of that, guiding questions when you come for your debriefing meetings. What do you talk about? What are we thinking about? And really it's, again, that kind of staff check-in and what went well, what could we have done better, what do we need to think about differently for next time. So Team 236 is, we're developing that as we move forward. For Team 236, we also, and I'll flash forward to the next slide just so you can see. I wanted everyone to be able to see. These are the monthly topics for this school year, so you can see the variety of different like mini PD sessions and topics that are provided to Team 236. And we're working on ways that we can push out some of this training to all staff as well. And again, this idea of like little snippets of professional learning are also effective, right? It doesn't just have to be what happens on those full days. So these are our monthly topics. What we also did with the Team 236, the size of Team 236 varies based on the school, right? So of course, our smaller elementary schools don't have as large of Team 236 as perhaps our high schools do. So the size of Team 236 is different, but their purpose is the same, the expectations are the same for them. And what we identified is on Team 236, we collaborated with principals and we said, who are some lead staff on this team? So we selected 2 or 3 team leaders of Team 236. We met with them, my administrative team and myself met with them for 2.5 hours before school started to kind of set the mission, set them up as leaders to be able to help carry this work forward. And then the intention will be, particularly with those leaders, that when we do some of this turnaround training, some of the professional learning will be building based, but with leaders from 236. When we were going through the process with the policy development, we got a lot of great feedback from all different parts of our community. And one thing that the staff shared that really resonated with me was that they felt that the most effective professional learning happens when they can present to their own school teams, that our experts within our school can share information and provide professional learning. So what we're doing is using that kind of structure of turnaround training, but we're building up capacity and consistency. So these are the topics that are hit for this year, and we'll continue to continue along with this model as we move forward in years to come. Upcoming events, as promised, we will also be offering for parents and guardians an information session, just like we did when we started the process. Now we'll do a session on the updated policy and administrative regulations so we can highlight for parents what's different, what do you need to know, what's helpful as a parent or a guardian, what can you expect from your school teams, and then provide the opportunity, obviously, for people to ask questions. So that will be on October 28th. We'll do it via Zoom, as we did last time, and information about that will be pushed out to the community next week. So that will be forthcoming as well.
And I think that concludes the update. So if there are any questions about that piece, or?
Thank you very much for that update. I have a couple of questions. Well, the first question is that the October 28th info session, all of the updates that'll be shared will be reflected in the handbook? Because there's the CSE handbook as well?
So.
Or how does that-
There is a family guide that is the Lower Merion School District Family Guide, right? The guide for special education and related student supports that is presently being updated and will be shared with the community shortly as well.
Okay.
So yes, all of that will be
Great, it'll be
updated
reflected.
within there as well.
Thank you, just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure. And two questions. Are the BCBAs on staff or are they contract?
So our board-certified behavior analysts are contracted through the intermediate unit. It's a highly specialized area of expertise, and so we do utilize intermediate unit support for that. And we have 5 full-time BCBAs that support the district.
And they float throughout the 11 schools?
They do.
Okay. And where did the monthly training topics come from? Did it come from the MCIU, when you had that list?
So our administrative team and the BCBAs met and collaborated and planned that together. So that was really under the support and expertise of our BCBAs.
Thank you.
I don't have questions, I just want to give an affirmation. I think that you have done a great job in working with the CSC to get to this point and how you've laid out the structures. Also, I can see how the BCBA has worked with the school teams to mirror the administrative regulations and some of the focus areas from the prior West End support. So still work to do, but I see that integration, so just appreciate the ongoing efforts.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thanks. I agree with Anna, what I said with that. I really like this structure of the teams and that to keep working with all that, and that you're building in PBIS. So I actually was just wondering, is there any methods of being used to track this to see how, if we're seeing better, so we can measure better if we're receiving better outcomes from this? I know I always have to ask about that.
Yeah, the challenge is, right, sometimes people say, well, are you using restraints as your measure of is this effective? And that isn't always a direct correlation, right? It's sometimes dependent on the students that are in front of us, the extent of needs, maybe perhaps what an individual student might be going through at a given period in time. The way that we intend to kind of track effectiveness, we're looking at effectiveness of professional learning, and that will be with pre and post measures before the professional learning sessions, so we can get a sense of like, what did staff know going in? What did they learn through the process? What do we need to continue to focus on? And that will allow us to continue to think about professional learning moving forward. So those are some of the things that we're going to measure and utilize for further professional learning planning.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying, because it is, how do you measure it? And also the fact that you have students, if you can just have better trained staff so there's less triggering events, I think it's fabulous for the kids. And so I, again, appreciate what you did, and I can open that up. Do any community members have any questions? Just come up to the podium and state your name.
There's also one in the chat.
There's one in the chat? Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name's Tanya Schreiber. Hi. And first of all, I just wanted to point out, this wasn't on the agenda for today's meeting. So policy 236 wasn't listed at all. So I don't know if I missed it or if it was an accident or an oversight, but I would just like to make sure that people are a bit more cautious about if things are going to be reviewed, that we let people know. But I also wanted to ask, I guess it sounds like, well, was it on the agenda? I don't
Yeah,
want to say
it's under the introduction, under updates.
on board docs?
Yeah.
No, on the. This is on board docs. Okay, on this, okay. When I was looking, if you look at the way it's written on this screen, it lists the things for overview, but it doesn't list this. But my apologies if it's listed on one of the agenda updates and overviews. I looked at the policy attachments that were listed and it didn't see it. So my apologies, I didn't notice it was on the on this. So my apologies for that. I guess I wanted to also ask, it sounds like So when it comes to this, the application of this policy, is there, what is the mechanism through which parents who have not, who have an IEP, and I know we discussed this in the spring, and who have said their children cannot be restrained, what is the mechanism to address the needs of those children?
So we work through individual IEP teams. I want to emphasize that our goal is to support students without the use of physical management. And so teams are always working to what strategies can we put in place so that we don't need to use physical management procedures. And physical management procedures are truly only used as a last case resort when safety is at hand. So teams are always looking at what additional strategies and interventions need to be put into place so that we avoid the need for physical management procedures. The reality is that there will be times where we need to use them. I've shared some examples of things that help to kind of frame that understanding, such as if a student is, these are real case scenarios, a student is going to run into Montgomery Avenue, the team is not going to allow that child to run into traffic. We need to keep children safe. And so there will still be times that physical management procedures are required. But again, every IEP team where students have positive behavior supports are working on how do we teach skills for students so that they can learn positive behaviors so that we can reduce those needs for physical management procedures.
So if there's a child with a heart condition, the state of Pennsylvania says they have a right, the parent has to approve the use of restraints. If you don't have that approval, how is the IEP crafted to accommodate that child?
It's very hard to answer that question.
It is.
When you talk about the highly individualized nature of an IEP and all the specifics that would be required to answer that question, what I would say is, what I do want to say is I would emphasize that we also have to keep children safe. And in an emergency situation, there may be times where they have to use physical management procedures in order to keep a child safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other community members who would like to ask? Okay, there's one in the chat.
There was, but it disappeared. Now, it's beginning to reappear. Jill Altschuler, Marion Station, are BCBAs mentioned in the policy or AR?
Yes. Administrative regulations. Thank you.
Okay, and that's it. Thank you so much for this update. Okay, thanks. And so moving, we only have one item proposed for first reading, and that's policy 125 summer programs.
All right, so in trying to be more coordinated in our efforts, the reason that this is being brought forward, as I mentioned earlier, is because you'll hear about summer programs as we do annually in the fall, and it seemed like a nice time to make some connections that way. And the last time this was reviewed was 10 years ago, which felt like yesterday, but apparently it was actually a decade ago. So just taking a look at some preliminary sort of, I'd say minor adjustments that are being proposed for this conversation, as you can see, are pretty minor. The intent of this is to basically authorize the administration to deliver a summer program. That's not necessarily required. So it's important to have that kind of authority coming from the board to engage in this work. And we do have a robust number of summer programs available for students, as we'll hear more about next week. The one I think I'd draw your attention to is actually something I'd like to propose another revision, which is is paragraph B2 under secondary summer school. So the idea of the revision here was to account for those summer opportunities that we've talked about in the acceleration conversation. So we wanted to make it clearer that these would be, and the proposed addition would be in accordance with the prescribed course sequencing, comma, to complete certain, so it's connected to not just a math course here or there, but it's connected to the sequencing that we've articulated in our planning guides and how we've discussed here in, not in policy necessarily, but in both CCOB and the regular board meeting. So that is an additional proposed revision. Again, this isn't time sensitive for us today, but is intended to open the conversation and any questions that you have today and then into next month.
Thank you. Question? Yeah.
Thank you. So one general question is, the policy is summer programs, but we're talking about summer school throughout. Is there a way to just, are we talking about programs or school? Like, I'm curious if the term summer school, because it's used throughout, so secondary summer schools, elementary summer school, but we're talking about summer programs. Is it for other things beyond, like, academic enrichment? I'm just curious.
I would say, I think the intent is for summer programs to be as broad as possible, and within that, the traditional like summer school concept is embedded, but we certainly could think about language that might clarify that a bit for the reader.
I'm just curious if that,
Scott.
No, I agree. I often go back and forth between calling it summer school and then summer programs, I think, is a more inclusive term. We're going to present the 13th, and it's academic enrichment, remediation, accelerated learning opportunities, support for transition. So the programs are in one or multiple of those tiers, and probably some language we should think about.
I'm just thinking in terms of consistency, just because if we're calling it summer school, it has one connotation. If it's a program, it might have a different connotation. Just food for thought.
I think, agreed. Like I see that challenges of which language to use. Summer programs, I think, is more inclusive, but when someone goes somewhere, I think they say I'm going to summer school instead of I'm going to summer program. So it's just a matter of like how we name it consistently. I understand the concern.
Just food for thought. Yeah, I'm just.
Yeah.
And then another question is, it says the summer programs are programs which are operated by the district. Do we contract out with, because health is online, and I think there was a Montgomery virtual. Is that stuff that we contract out with, or?
Well, two parts to that. Some parts we do. Health, as we'll present on the 13th specifically, we move that from, that's our probably most subscribed to summer school or program.
That's what I mean, just for food for thought, but yeah.
And we've taken that and created our own this year, which we'll present to on
So
that.
it's like an in-house.
We just ran it last summer in-house
Yeah,
for the first time. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say all of our programs / school is district run. Just to be clear, to sort of clarify the difference, we have like Right at School runs a camp program, and that's Right at School. So that would be the only summer type offering, I think, that I can think of on site, other than some like sports camps that are, everything else is run by the district, even if we contract out the service.
Okay, because when I was looking online, the Lower Merion Virtual Academy, what used to be, there's still the Lower Merion, the Montgomery MVP, forget what that stands for, virtual something. And so there's a registration from last spring that says register by June 11th of 2025 or June 16th. That's something that we, like, it's our registration, we're not doing it through them. I just want to clarify. Like, if it's...
It used to be you had to register in both places. You'd
That's-
register here, and then you'd do an additional registration to them as well,
Okay.
once you registered here. I don't know if that's still the same.
But
who's-
It's still an MOU with the district for providing services.
But who's operating it?
The other organization, but it's still the district operating it writ large, because we are contracting services for them to do it versus Right at School is contracting building use for the space to run their own program in our space.
Uh-huh. So it's okay. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that because it was,
I mean,
Yeah,
Gray and
we're
red.
ultimately responsible for the providing that service, whether it's through our own staff directly or through MVP. We have an administrator that runs that program, so I would view it as whether they're registering through the MVP portal or our own, ultimately, the administrator in charge is responsible to ensure that all those registrations are processed and students are where they're supposed to be in terms of receiving that service.
But the content comes from them versus us.
For the most part, other than what Scott,
now,
yes.
yeah.
Correct. But that, the administrator that Ms. Schaefer is speaking of follows, make sure they're on track. We'll reach out to the family if not, those type of things.
Got it, okay. I think that was all I wanted to clarify, thank you.
I have a few. One, I just wondered about the distinction, we've talked about it in a few different policies of pulling out the middle school. So elementary school in this definition, we have through fifth. So I don't know if we want to
right.
move fifth to secondary or create a different distinction.
We were just talking about this morning. I actually think that question, together with like how we talk about programs and school, I think will really be illuminated by the presentation, so we can all come back and say like, oh, that makes a lot of sense to do it this way, but we could certainly do 3 tiers in this policy and talk about it in different ways, if that makes sense.
Yeah, or just if it makes sense to keep it in elementary, maybe like elementary plus fifth or something like that, so it doesn't get confusing.
Then there's the concept of like rising fifth.
Yeah.
Right, so, because it's the summer.
So that was one thing. I wondered, I was just messing around with the language for number 1, instead of saying not successful, maybe something like needed additional support. So B1, to make up certain core courses with the students, with the student who needed additional support during the regular school year to work towards being on track towards graduation, or something like that. I didn't really see the difference in, it seemed to me you were crossing out failed to have a more positive connotation, that's an assumption, but was not successful, it seems like a synonym.
Well,
phrase.
I was trying to make it a little bit softer. That was not successful is the language that's currently used in our summer program guide. So I was just also trying to create some consistency, but we certainly can talk a little bit more about what makes sense.
Yeah, it's also interesting, there's some people that pass and need some support, and this is specifically for people that did not pass. So I guess like there's a label of like was not successful equating to didn't pass the course and needs that credit, as opposed to needs additional support, which I think is more inclusive and probably not as specific to the people that have to take the class.
That makes sense. I wonder about adding to the end though, to work towards graduation, which also on track, like that's the purpose for retaking the course, right?
Or is it for acceleration?
Typically.
Well, it's delineated acceleration is bullet 2, so that's called out.
Which bullet are you in now?
So B1, if it is that, because I get it, you failed the course, you need to take it. Generally, you're told to take it, so you're on track for graduation. So if you don't take it, you're at risk of not being on track for graduation. So something, and then in bullet 2, we talk about acceleration, which is your other topic you just mentioned, Scott.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I get however you want to word it, I don't really care. But I think I would just make it clear that if it is, you are wanting kids to take a certain course in the summer to be on track to graduate, so that that policy is clear that we're offering a solution. So if you don't take that track, there's also a policy that goes back to say that we offered it as a catch-all. However you want to word it. I know it's a
I mean, I
first
think that
read.
makes sense, and I like it paired with the idea of like, there's an important point behind this of when you aren't successful, that you need to be in order to achieve that status of a graduate.
Yeah. Okay, B2, I appreciate it's connected to our math, our math trajectory flow chart, my favorite topic from last year, where we still need to circle back on the opportunity gap and other things to do to make sure, but I'm just throwing that in. I would recommend for this policy, taking out math specifically to make it as broad as possible. There might be another time that you change the course trajectory of literacy or social studies or science, and then we wouldn't have to revise the policy again. So, just an idea.
I think I mean, I think this is speaking specifically, I think I hear your point. Eventually, you may change how we're looking at that. Currently, the acceleration process of math, the spirit of this is to match the spirit of what we already have approved and are working with under. Your point is if we change in the future?
Yeah, my point, so similar to, I'm just trying to, if we're rewriting the policy, to Megan's point, we haven't looked at it in 10 years, right? To save us work down the road, since you can always change the ARs for the specific courses, but to give yourself as administrators the most flexibility in any changes you would want to do, if it's accelerated past taking out math specifically, would allow you to make those changes without needing a change in policy to then accelerate the program.
I think we can talk about, with the caveat that it's in accordance with the prescribed course sequencing and being really specific about that, I think I'm more comfortable maybe making it broader. So if we put all that language together and look at it again, perhaps internally, and come back with that.
Yeah, or
makes
just,
sense to me.
I guess my question would be, what is the downside, like what are the downstream impacts of making it broader? You can tell me later that.
No, I think what Megan's point is, I agree with, is we wouldn't want the policy to be used to circumvent the course sequence. And if read vague, I would want just additional language to support the concept that you want to take math out, to make it broader. I would want language of the current approved course sequence or something like that, so students aren't using it, or I'm sorry, so it's not being used in the spirit of skipping required content.
Got it, that makes sense. That was all I had. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna, because I was thinking the same thing. And I also wondered, we added kindergarten in. Is that now because of full day K that we are now including kindergarten level, or did we not have kindergarten level rising first graders?
I think that was just an adjustment because, two reasons. It's actually in the first paragraph, kindergarten through fifth grade. I don't know why elementary school was labeled first through fifth.
So it was just something we missed.
So
and
it was
we're
just,
okay,
yeah, I
and
think
we're
it's
aligning it
mistaken. We do
better.
have,
Okay.
like, depending on how you define, like, rising kindergartners or kindergartners rising into first grade, there's programs that cover that.
Do we
that
have
group.
preschool, like kids coming into kindergarten, some preschool for get them kindergarten ready, or do we?
For early intervention services, that's a separate
Right.
piece, but I just wanted, I believe it's more consistent to say, to include kindergarten in that, where I made that revision, because it's throughout kindergarten.
In the
And
context of early intervention service, are you talking about the stuff that IUs usually would
Correct.
approve? And
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Me again, one thing I forgot. On B4, do you want to add for the rising fifth grader orientation? I know it's only one day, or so far it is. But it says, it talks
Is that
about
a
the eighth
summer?
grade.
I want to confirm, is that a summer opportunity? See when?
No, not currently. I think when you're saying the one day, you mean like
Like the fifth grade.
outside of summer programming,
Yeah, the
Oh,
fifth
okay.
during the
graders.
school year, orient you to your next.
Or like in the context of this, I was thinking, I don't know what the eighth graders do. I know the rising fifth graders to the middle school had like one day that was optional for them to go in. So
okay.
if there is an eighth grade transition day in the summer to high school, I would just suggest adding the middle school one too,
Yeah, we could.
if you want.
Yeah, I want to.
I don't also know
No,
if it
I
has
don't,
to
I'm
be
not,
in the
like, I'm just
policy.
thinking through also, we have orientation for other grades, like new students, et cetera.
Yeah.
Does it need to be even broader than that? So.
I mean,
we
to
can-
tie in the concept that you used on your last
Yeah.
point, if you take the grades out and support to school, it could be more inclusive of
Yeah.
programming for any transition.
Smart. Yep. I love a first grade. It's like brainstorming. We need a whiteboard. Come on, Megan, our policy jokes. Like, let's go, come on.
I'm going to miss this.
Are you though, Mel? Are you?
We're going to make it better together. That's the point.
Who knows, maybe you'll see me back here. Okay, so what is our plan for this? Are we going to move it forward from first reading with the changes we've discussed, or should we keep it at first reading for?
Sorry, I have one more. I forgot to.
Now we have to keep it at first.
Yes, now first read. I just wondered if we are not going to mention ESY in the policy, do you want to at least reference the ESY policy, like wherever we are talking? I know we are talking about it, I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but at least reference it if we don't name it explicitly. Thanks.
Actually, I have a piggyback off of that. Would it make sense to also include the Right at School programs, some sort of like cross-reference to other summer programs that also exist, just so that there's sort of a broader view of the offerings?
That this doesn't include opportunities that may be offered to outside vendor or something like that.
Yeah, just so that it's like, here, in case people have questions, they know where to reference and.
Okay, I guess, I was waiting to make sure again. Any community members who had any questions or comments for this policy? Okay.
There are multiple chats.
Okay, there's some in the chat. Okay.
Christina Chang, Penn Valley. Regarding summer programs, I have two topics of feedback. While students have the option of paying to take health over the summer, if they choose to take health during the school year, that seems to create an excess number of free periods. Unsure if this applies to all, most, some students. But I'm asking the high school scheduling team or whoever is responsible to help take a look at this impact and if there's anything that can be done going forward. Second topic is summer pre-calculus. Students' math track is determined at the middle school level. There is no way to level up at the high school level without paying for and taking a summer virtual pre-calc class. Please ask for feedback from families/students who have completed the summer virtual pre-calc class. From what I heard last summer, there is lots of room for improvement of this summer virtual class. Jill Altschuler, Marion Station. Are non-Lower Marion School District curricula used for summer programs? If so, how they are vetted? How often is this policy supposed to be reviewed? 10 years seems like an incredibly long period of time. Is there an AR for this policy? In terms of content of non-Lower Marion School District curricula, you should be aware that there was a significant problem in a local school district that uses MVP. With all due respect, Anna, when you said however you want to word it, I don't really care, shouldn't you care as a school board member? Scott, maybe instead of saying unsuccessful, you could change to did not pass the course, since you said, think is what unsuccessful means. That concludes the chat comments.
I can respond, Jill, just to be clear. I said however you want to word it because it is a first reading. So it's a collaborative time for us to brainstorm how we should word something, and then it's brought back to the table. So of course I care, that's why I raised it. And also we're working as a collective team, so I look forward to the second read when we see how the revisions were incorporated. Thanks.
I can respond to some of the other questions. There is no AR for this policy. Not all policies have ARs, and this one does not. There is no requirement that this policy be reviewed any specific number of years every so often. This or no other policy requires it either. Those are the ones I can answer.
For the questions about the summer programs and health and pre-calc, is that something we could take offline, or? Yeah, it's curriculum committee, so we'll talk about that there.
On the 13th?
Yeah. Yeah, so, okay, we'll be talking about, so hold on, it'll be probably come up as a conversation piece in the curriculum committee. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. It's, CCOB, actually, it's the Monday, not this
October
Monday, the
13th.
next Monday. It's next Monday. 13th. The 13th.
I'm just saying, if you all have this set agenda for curriculum already. I don't think we have to derail it, but just before we move this forward, just know it's a topic of interest.
Yeah,
The questions.
Yes, yeah.
right. Okay, so we're going to leave this at first reading and come back with, correct? And come back with all these changes we've discussed for next year, next policy meeting. Okay. Moving on to the next agenda item, we were starting with the items for discussion, and the first one up is AR 610, purchasing contract approval procedures.
Yes, this is just a simple plugging a hole that existed. I received a phone call from someone, they weren't clear who could sign a contract. So I just suggested that we'd add this language to make it clear.
I had a question about the back. We've got that, when it's in your face, you kind of read it more closely. And I wondered, we're referencing the contracts with that we see as facilities and purchasing. But when we're reviewing we're not referencing it as part of the CCOB on this list. Should that be referenced, or is it because we're looking at it more from a curriculum point of view that we're not looking at the agreement? Or?
Ultimately, all of these contracts go through facilities and purchasing, so while they might be initially discussed, usually the CCOB discussion is around like the substance of what's being, what the nature of the contract is versus like what are the technical requirements, the terms, et cetera, which is more of a facilities and purchasing. I mean, I don't know that it hurts to add like other relevant committees or something generic like that to the.
I thought it was in there. Isn't it in there, number 2? Shall be contracts relating to specific components of the educational program.
Oh, yeah.
Blah, blah,
It is
blah,
there.
shall be reviewed and approved by the applicable board committee.
Oh, yeah. Then there is its curriculum committee.
As an example.
Okay, yeah, and I didn't know whether I was just looking more at the list on the back as opposed to this. I did notice that in my review of it. Okay, so do we have any questions on this AR from the community? Okay.
Hi, Tanya Schreiber, Penguin. So there's been, over the years, as we go through the list of bills and facilities, there's oftentimes questions about some of the bills that possibly over the course of a year might exceed this amount. And I guess my suggestion would be that there is a line in here that basically says how some of these things that they might be approved in executive session, et cetera, that there is some note that says something about how that occurs. So, for example, if it's $7,500 or more, just add a line that says not all of these are going to be public, it's going to be executive session, and perhaps the list of bills has some kind of asterisk or line so that people know that that amount was actually brought up, even though it might not technically be a contract, it might be a reimbursement, could be the utility bill, it could be anything, but there are things that are not contracts, and this very specifically says all contracts. So I guess I would ask, could it say all expenditures? Thank you.
Can I respond?
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to be clear, no contracts or expenditures are approved in executive session. If there's something that the superintendent has the authority to approve, given this, the superintendent may inform the board, but the board does not, in executive session, approve contracts or other expenditures. That's not, they may discuss if there's something that's appropriate for executive session to discuss it, but the actual approval of any contract or expenditure that the board is required to approve always occurs in public.
So every single item on the list of bills above $7,500, not talking about approving the list of bills, but the discussion about the expense. So for example, a dialogue about purchasing Oakwell again, or something like that. That wouldn't be brought before the public.
The conversation, the deliberation about the purchasing or sale of property may occur in executive session, but the actual agreement itself is on a public agenda and can be discussed publicly.
So everything on the list of bills.
Well, in theory, yes. I mean, if it's on a list of bills, that doesn't, they've either gone to a committee typically, or, you know, or if it's something, I mean, it's disclosed and voted on by the board, whether, I don't know that I doubt every single expenditure that the district makes is a subject of a conversation among board members. There are probably many board bills that get paid that the board doesn't, just routinely gets paid. But that doesn't mean, they're not discussed in executive session. That was my point.
Thank you.
Just to add on to that, all bills and expenditures are provided to us as board members to review in advance of board voting at the board meeting, and we all have autonomy and authority to pull any of those expenditures off the list to discuss further in public, not in executive.
Yeah, it's consent vote. It's the list of bills that we discuss at the facilities and purchasing meeting that also they could. Yeah, and then there's the internal reviews for things that are just expenses going through at the building level and at the administrative level, correct? Yeah. Okay. Okay. And is there anything in chat, or is there? No, okay. Okay, so we're, do we have another, what's the next discussion item is enrollment of students?
Yes, so the next three items are for discussion today, and I'm going to try to give an overview of all three collectively so we can have a conversation, open up some dialogue about, you know, the context for this, what's in policy, what's legally required, what we do in terms of just the implementation of the policy and regulations. And I think that's helpful for giving you context to the way it's written and what it looks like in action. So I'm going to give this high-level overview, anticipating that this is not there's no proposed revisions right now. I will share that the last time we looked at, we've looked at these a couple times in the last few years. One of the more recent discussions was around a re-registration process, and that was an update, and I'll highlight that in a minute. But as we sort of are ending our enrollment phase, registration phase for this year, not that that doesn't happen year-round, we're settling into, you know, our routines and getting prepared to make some recommendations in November, but wanted to tee up what the lay of the land looks like right now. So if you don't mind, just to give a sense of what an annual registration looks like in terms of numbers. So for 25-26, we had a total, this is as of actually September 10th, 978 new registrations. Some of these may be family members of existing students, but a lot of new students as well and new families. In August alone, we had 201 of those that were submitted at that time. So I share that because that becomes a time when everyone is, you know, really anxious about getting into school, and we have a lot coming together in those last few weeks. So I wanted to share that that's a high stress level time for everyone, and for registration in particular. The other thing that happens year-round, but also a lot happens over the summer, which is change of address. So someone may be moving within the district boundaries, but into a different feeder pattern, et cetera. So we had over 100 just since June 18th. 18th. So all of those go through a similar registration process, and I'm going to talk about what that looks like as well. And for August, we had 72 new ones, and that's not uncommon. The number seemed a little higher this year to us, but you do have like leases that expire, other things that happen like on an annual basis that sometimes you see more, higher numbers in August for that reason. Just in terms of overall numbers, I thought it was interesting that, or notable that our overall enrollment this year is only 20 students off what the Montgomery County Planning Commission's projections were. So they were pretty on target overall numbers, and by level, we're pretty close to what they had projected over 2 years ago. So that's helpful. I say that because it's good to be consistent with those projections in terms of planning and staffing, et cetera. Our registration page is linked here, and a lot of what I'll talk about today is information that's available, and we try to make more consumable for folks that are just trying to navigate the system on our registration page. So there's like FAQs, et cetera, so that take the policy work that we do and again, try to translate that and make it more user-friendly for our families, like over 1,000 families that used it this year. Next slide. So policy 200 is really the basics of what's required by law. What we're required to do as a district is to register students who live within our boundaries, provided that they have, the family produces the required registration documents, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But they're fairly basic. The acceptable proof of a student's age, residence, immunizations, and a completed parent registration statement. That's basically what's required to enter our schools. I also wanted to note that we did talk about, and it's not on the agenda today, but recently did talk about policy in AR 201, which involves age of entry and placement. So we're not talking about that today. That's in policy 201 just for reference. I shared up there that in that policy, there's mention of custody arrangements. And as you can imagine, that can be kind of a challenging situation at times for us to navigate at the outset of, when there's divorce, custody, where's this child living, where are they living the majority of the time. So again, there's some basics, but everything becomes more complex as we talk about unique family situations, which there are many. So I highlight that as sometimes a tension that comes up in just the registration process of determining who's got primary custody of a child and so forth. So that's in there as a notation, and we can keep moving, please. And the administrative regulation, again, highlights what those required documents are. I also want to highlight here that it's certainly the case that we have students that are coming from all over the world. So when you talk about, immunizations, they're not all from the local family doctor down the street. They could be from a lot of different places. That requires a high level of just understanding, time, patience, working through. Sometimes, many times, documents need to be translated. So there's a lot that goes into even, I'd like to say these are the basics, but everything takes on a little bit of a twist, even if you're just talking about out of state, out of county, like it doesn't have to be someone that's coming from a different country, it could be from a different state. And so just getting and gathering and understanding those initial documents can take some time. There's also in the administrative regulation documents that may be requested in terms of others like student records, et cetera, and that's typically done by reaching out to if the student is coming from another school in another district, whether it be local or across the world, what information helps us best serve the students upon entry. And that goes to that policy 201 too, which is where the child should be placed at initial registration. And sometimes that information is not forthcoming. So that becomes another layer of it's a team process, and it truly is. Like, other teams then become involved in deciding, what's the next best step to take with the student and the family in terms of services they may need, placement that needs to be determined. So ideally, we have coordination with the students prior to school if they're coming to us having prior schooling, but that's not always the case, and I wanted to make that known. And then, so for registration purposes and kind of going back into the basics, this is screenshots of our portal. And again, I think some language that we probably want to change is related to where registration happens, because registration is now 100% online and has been since COVID. It's created a tremendous amount of efficiencies, both for registration and for families, to be able to do the registration this way. And while we know that not everyone has the skills or access to use our registration portal, we do allow opportunities for families to come in and present documents that otherwise can't be uploaded and assist in that way. But for the large part, again, if you think about the 1,000 people that have gone through it, a high percentage do use the portal successfully that we've found to date. And again, it's uploading the documents. There's a summary page that shows the user what's been submitted, what still needs to be submitted, et cetera, and then a sign-off page. So it's pretty straightforward. It's intended to lift what's in the policy onto an online portal. And that's been pretty consistent, other than our attempts to update and make it as user-friendly as possible over the years. And then the other additional pieces of the administrative regulation relate to change of address, which is a similar process, although families don't have to resubmit the immunization, those things. They do have to present the proof of residency as if they were a new registrant to the district. So that is really what is required for the change of address. That is also now online, self-service, which is, not that it wasn't before, but we've created a portal where it's, I'm sorry, I'm looking to LaToya here because she is really, truly the support system to our registration office. When I talk about all of these situations that are the unique one-offs, she is, and I hate to use a football term, but quarterbacking a lot of what happens next, including consult with me, consult with our curriculum team, et cetera. So depending on the needs, she really does a lot of that detailed work in service of doing it efficiently, effectively, and within the policy and administrative regulations. So thank you always, LaToya. So there are other situations that are identified in the administrative regulation that are called to attention there, and also for the purposes of this presentation. So we know that there are different living arrangements for some of our students, and that may include living with a resident adult, and that's typically referred to as a support gratis, meaning that a resident adult is taking responsibility for a student for the duration of the year in lieu of a parent for a number of different reasons, and there are specific regulations around how we navigate that, and so that's one situation that's unique, and again, it takes a little more involvement of our team members. We also, throughout, I think the policy talk about translation support services. That's also clearly on our website where that's needed, and work closely with our ELD team to provide those services for families, and know that those cases often need special attention as well to make sure we're getting those through the portal. We can see when a family starts to enter a registration, and if it's lingering there, that's some follow-up we can do as well to make sure that no one's sort of caught in the the process. We have students, foster students and other placements and living arrangements that are more unique, but are called to attention in the administrative regulation and do occur. So all of these are special circumstances that require more of a coordinated effort and team member involvement. So I, sort of along the same lines, policy 202 relates to non-resident student situations and makes sense to talk about in tandem with policy 200. There are situations where non-resident students are permitted to stay or remain or attend the district without having become a resident or residing here. And I wanted Ken at some point to weigh in and say that all of this is legally compliant, but also on the definition of residence, it's important to share that residency isn't just about having a deed to a home or a lease to an apartment. It actually requires that the child is living here. And I think that's something that we want to enhance or ensure is defined in our policy and regulation. But Ken, do you mind talking about what that means legally?
Sure. Residency is basically where is the student actually living most of the time. It's the classic definition is, head on the pillow. It's where, it's designed to prevent situations where a family claims they live in multiple places and therefore they can sort of district shop. It's got to be where the student is actually living most of the time. That can be changed by a custody order. A custody order can or by agreement, they can, parents who aren't living together with the child can designate which district, if the court approves it, as long as one of the parents actually resides in that district. But other than that, it's pretty much where the student actually is living. We can flesh that out more in the regulation when we revise it.
When there are situations that call into question the residency of a particular student, it's a process documented in this particular policy and administrative regulation that authorizes the administration to investigate those cases. We take these matters very carefully and sensitively, in as much as we want to ensure that whatever decisions a family is making, that the child understands that they belong here and that we support them while they're here. And so it's a balance of trying to work directly with families, and we view it as a win when we are able to confirm their residency here. That's what we want to do, is not confirm that they don't live here. In fact, what we want to do is say, what is the evidence that they do live here before we take any of those next steps? And that's really important to us and to our team to proceed with that level of thought and care. So we'll talk a little bit more about what those investigations look like, but I wanted to share that as a starting point. We also do renewals of support gratis and multiple occupancy situations on an annual basis. That has been historic, our practice, and also articulated in our policy or administrative regulation. And then again, as we move forward with any case, there are specific due process requirements under the law and under our policy that we follow before there's any type of recommendation to remove a student from our roles. there's a lot in the administrative regulation, so I just wanted to highlight or underline the places where I thought were important to share, that we are authorized under this administrative regulation and under the policy to commence an investigation if we receive credible information or circumstances that raise a concern that the student isn't living in the district. We notify the family multiple times and ask for proof of residency or ask the family to withdraw the student. And then as a last resort, if we are not successful in getting that information to confirm residency, there is a process for an opportunity for a hearing before any recommendation is made to the board to remove a student from our rolls. And so that process takes months to work through. And when I say there are multiple notices, there are also multiple ways in which we notify, whether it's a mailing, whether it's a mailing, it's an email, it's a phone call, it's, potentially a house visit. All of those things happen prior to any action that we take to remove a student from our rolls. And then finally, what I touched on at the beginning, that part of the regulation that I wanted to highlight was doing that re-registration by grade band, potentially as a way to do things, to think through things on a more routine basis, and ensure that when we're doing when we look at residency, we're looking at it from, the standpoint of all students. And so that was proposed. That would be a pretty significant endeavor for us to take on. As I told you, the numbers of that we're looking at on an annual basis, if we added to that, what that looks like. That's why we're not prepared to make a recommendation today that we'll act on either one of these. All the administrative regulation did when we revised it was to give us, the administration, the authority to do that. So we're not in a position today to make that a recommendation for this year, but wanted to point it out as one of the more recent revisions that we had made. And then finally, AR 206-4, which is something we look at annually, is commonly referred to as our partner school plan. It's not the plan itself, but it gives rise to the plan that we recommend every year in an effort to maintain favorable class sizes, programming, budgetary, constraints that we face if we aren't managing that enrollment piece through this type of planning. So I wanted to bring that to your attention because we will be bringing back that recommendation. Typically we do that in November or December. So that's forecasting that other conversation that we'll be having in the future as well. And I think that concludes and a blank ending.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Informative. Abby?
Thank you very much. This is very helpful, very, very, it had been on the docket for review for a while, so I appreciate it we're discussing it. Just to clarify, you were saying that in November it will be up for discussion again? Or
we're going to take, whatever questions you have today and make some recommended updates. I see this moving as a first read into November, so wanted to have, again, I think there's a lot there. We haven't talked about it for a while and wanted to give some context first before we made any proposals, but you can, I try to also forecast what will be forthcoming.
I appreciate that. I would like to lend support to continuing the discussion about re-registering as on a kind of a regular basis. I think it would be helpful to explore that further. Different grade bands. It could just be helpful to kind of, as an audit, is how I think about these things. Like, okay, here's what we have. Here's, here are the class sizes we have, and here's what we have this year. And not that it doesn't already happen, but in a way that maybe hasn't happened for quite some time. I would just put my support out there for that as we continue the conversation.
I just want to emphasize that this policy has been reviewed at length. The last time we did this one was 12/18/23, and we had multiple conversations. So I appreciate the conversation. I respectfully disagree with my colleague here about putting in a process in place unless it's at the recommendation of the superintendent for specific reasons, and part of that conversation last time was about the extensive resources, financial, people time that it takes away from other priorities in educating our students. So just want to put that out there. I know that you highlighted, Megan, the very punitive pieces in this, but I also want to emphasize that the piece I think is really important is that if a student is already attending school, every effort is made to give the benefit of the doubt to families in assuming best intentions or assuming extreme circumstances that have put families in that situation. And I think that's an essential piece of the policy when we're thinking about well-being and belonging of students. So just wanted to highlight that too, and maybe moving forward, continue to highlight that duality in the purpose of the policy. Thank you.
I'll just respond in saying I don't disagree with you, and I and we all want to foster belonging for every student that's here, and this is definitely not intended to be punitive in any way. And I think this is part of our fiduciary responsibility to ensure that our funds and taxes are spent the way that they are intended. And so it's important that we identify where things might need to be improved and this is also kind of a suggestion for processes improvement. It's not about specific students or it's really just ensuring that we know what we are budgeting for. And yeah, I mean, I hear your point, but it's not at all intended to be punitive. It's intended to be fiscally responsible.
I get that. I do think we do disagree, which is okay. That's the purpose of having multiple perspectives. Personally, I don't think this is the thing that needs to be focused on in terms of there is a policy in place. There are many procedures in place to investigate when there is concerns. And if the superintendent puts forth any changes, then of course, but I think it's okay for us to disagree. You think it should be put in a different place? I think it should be put in. I don't assume that you think it's punitive to put students out. I was disagreeing with you on the review and audit.
Okay, my turn. In this, I do have a question about all the items that we request in with the registration. Are these things that do we decide what is on this list, or is this something that's from the school code? Picture identification and physical examination?
It's a combination. There are some things that you're allowed to ask for, there's some things that you're not allowed to ask for, and there is some gray area, so it's a combination.
It's a combination, okay. Okay, and I'm kind of middle of the road on the re-registration. I can see where I'm concerned about the burden on both the resources here in the school district and also on the family. I mean, if we ever considered this, I'm wondering with the portal of registration, how long are the records held there? Are they there for the entire? Because if a family is re-registering, it seems like there's a lot of documents that's not going to change. And if they are, as far as if we come up with a process that things like a notarized birth certificate or things like that, are we keeping that in a portal where it's so you only have a select piece of information for in that thing? And I'm thinking about more of the nuts and bolts of that.
Yeah. So two things. Yes, we maintain the information that would be likely required in a process like that, which would just be the proof of residency. We wouldn't ask families to submit all of the other information again, like the immunizations. It would just be the proof of residency. I want to be transparent about the concern I do have about, and one of the reasons I talked about the volume of registrations is the challenge of doing re-registration on top of that and the complexity of cases that we do see. So I just want to share, I'm hesitant to say that we're ready to make that recommendation, or at least from the registration office perspective. But yes, we would have some of all of the other
But
information.
you also, you said you had 108 people changing residences this year, and that's like, and so, I mean, if they've just re-registered with that, it seems strange, it would create another burden, extra burden, if you could immediately ask them in a structure of, if every grade this is gonna, it would be redundant and able to, it seems like there should be ways for allotment for that of people who do move within the district. And that would reduce the burden. And I'm sorry, did you have something?
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Residency is a discussion in every district. And we talk about processes in place, and that's where we are right now, right? What's that process look like? Is it worth the burden of funds to do that and time to do that and manpower to do that versus what we would uncover, things like that. So it's really more right now about the uncovery or the discovery of processes that we could put in place that really makes this manageable.
Yeah. The last thing that I think more of so that I agree with Anna, there's the effect of the student. And when you were talking about how when something does come up and there is multiple ways that you're trying to reach the parent or guardian and figure out what's going on and that, is there a point, and I mean, I'd like to say that if we're a month out from school and something does get decided, I feel for the best interest of the student, they should be allowed to stay and finish out the school year. I don't know if I'm an anomaly in this, but I think we're in support of the students and their ability to that something in our AR should have a timing on that as well. Yeah.
And there is, and we can talk about that a little bit more, but we certainly, it's not work that we enjoy doing. I'll just put it that way, right? And that's why we hope that what we find in terms of an investigation is that we can confirm residency. So, yeah, there is some language already about dates and timelines, and we are sensitive to like where the student is in their educational journey, about how we do that with dignity and, create a soft landing for the student and their family when it's inevitably required based on that residency standard.
I think the last thing I would add, if we are going to revisit this, given that this was just revisited and we spent a lot of time, I would want to understand the purpose us revisiting. If it is fiduciary, then I would first like to see a cost analysis of what we're actually trying to save. The cost of educating students versus the cost of employees, time on task, additional temps, all of the other pieces that would go into running that, to understand the purpose of why it would need to be revised, given procedures are outlined for responding to students that might be out of district. So food for thought if it's brought again to the table.
Good point. Yeah. Is there anybody, community members who would like to speak? Come on up.
Hi, I'm Samantha Florent from Villanova. I wasn't initially planning on asking a question today, but I have a question about AR 200 because my family actually encountered quite a bit of difficulty when we were trying to enroll as a new family in the district, despite already being resident in the district. And this is because we had previously lived in Malaysia. And apparently the district nurse at the time, I don't know if she's still an employee, had previously adopted a child from Vietnam who, when she'd adopted her, had had active symptoms of tuberculosis. So she was convinced that our children could be symptomatic for tuberculosis. And shortly before we had left Malaysia, they had actually been exposed to someone with tuberculosis, and we had done all the screenings before we left, and they had tested negative. But even though we had all the documentary proof of this, she would not accept it, and she insisted that they could not enroll in the district and start until we did all of this extensive screening for tuberculosis again. And I even called the kid's pediatrician in Kuala Lumpur, who had the Malaysian equivalent of a knighthood, which if anyone is on a pub quiz team, that's called a DATO, D-A-T-O. You're welcome. And he said, this is ridiculous. And because we were so new as residents to Pennsylvania, we were not covered by any insurance. So we spent nearly $1,000 on all this testing, which was ridiculous. It's delayed the start of our kids' enrollment in school by a month. And I'm not sure if your new AR200 would cover situations like this, because I know previous nation of residents is not a protected class, and I'm not suggesting it should be, but it was just such an unpleasant experience to go through, and I would hope that no one would have to go through that again.
Thanks for sharing that. That's something that I think, could we look at that as the discussion?
Absolutely.
Yeah. One in the chat?
Michelle Vessel, Gladwin. I do remember at a finance meeting last year, it was discussed that there isn't much follow-up on this issue, even when it is reported that somebody doesn't actually live here. Do we have any numbers as to how many cases we have had recently within the last year or so, and how many have been actually followed through with checking out, and what were the results? Why have a policy if we aren't using it? Do we even have staff to investigate these issues? In response to Anna's comment, it is important to taxpayers who are paying over $30,000 in taxes, and the school board states we are currently in a $5 deficit. But you want to allow people who do not actually live here and are not paying taxes to go to our school. The policy is there for this reason.
I'll just respond that I did underscore the fiduciary responsibility, but rather running a cost analysis if the money's lost from doing the audit when staff time and resources was more or less than the money lost in what we were doing with students and investigations and them staying, and to make an informed decision based on data and actual figures.
No, I think for both of those comments, we can come back with some more information for the future discussion. And in terms of like any process, knowing what's currently being expended is going to be part of that conversation. So we'll have
I just want to add that I agree with what Anna said. So we can have a disagreement on certain things, but I agree that this should be done in a way that is, we'll say, evidence-based.
I appreciate that. Yeah, okay. Okay. Okay, thank you. Did we finish everything?
We did.
Okay.
I have one chat on
Okay.
a non-agenda
Okay.
topic. Sorry? That's your discretion.
Okay. Oh, okay. I thought, is it related to, I thought we were like, we did
It's
a,
not related to anything on the agenda for policy.
okay.
Is it a policy question?
It's a question about policy, yeah.
It's up to you all.
Okay.
It's fair to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine. I thought I was not realizing there was I assumed it was anything, at the end, it was anything related to what this committee's oversight is. I thought I understood. Was there?
The policy is the agenda item, but I'm not going to block it.
Okay,
Go ahead.
we can visit this first. Yeah.
Michelle Vessel, Gladwin, question regarding a different topic. Is there a policy or guideline that addresses the scheduling of events, giving homework assignments during religious holidays? Is there a way to look at the calendar and not schedule important events during religious holidays?
We do have a policy that probably is most best to answer that question, which is the guidelines concerning religion policy, which is policy 112. Which one? Or 1:30. Do you have it? I'm gonna-
Yeah, I believe it's 1:30.
1:30.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I think we've come to an end of this policy meeting. Our next meeting is on November 7th, and thank you, everyone, for participating. Thank you. Okay, bye.
Thank you.